My name is Thomas Carty and I'm a professional heavyweight boxer, current BOI Celtic heavyweight champion. So on March 15th, I had a big fight on Paddy's Day in Madison Square Garden, New York. And during the fight in the second round, I ruptured my ACL. Straight away, there and then, I thought my career was over and never had an injury before, never had a serious injury before, never had an operation before. I got back to New York Tuesday, got the MRI in Sanchez Sports Clinic Wednesday, and got a phone call Friday to say that it was actually my ACL that was completely torn. So that was a rough old patch, yeah. I kept hearing the word intense. They were like, oh yeah, doing your ACL post-surgery is really intense. And I was like, oh yeah, they're probably just, you know what I mean, overinflating or whatever. But no, it's definitely intense. It's a real tough one, you know what I mean? Like mentally it's really, really hard, and then physically, obviously, you're after having your leg cut open and thrown about the place, do you know what I mean? So it was really difficult. For me, I take everything really seriously, and I do an awful lot of research in anything that I do. And you know, I had seen that the physio you choose, the physio you go with, is one of the main factors for a good result coming back post ACL. So I looked into it more and more. Who comes most highly recommended, and then post that, when I found out who comes highly recommended, who has the most experience, do you know what I mean? So I wanted the most experienced, I wanted the best physio, you know, money wasn't an option, there's nothing like that. I wanted the best, you know, I was really gonna invest in it, invest my time and invest my money. I wanted to find out who is the best in the country, and it was actually Ray Moran that recommended Risteard.
My name is Risteard Byrne, I'm a clinical specialist physiotherapist here at Rapid Physiotherapy. When I first met Thomas, I mean, we had a long discussion at the start. It's always important for me to try and make sure that we set expectations, because it's really important for me that we're really well aligned on what our goals are, what's important. We had a really good conversation, I think, at the start. And look, for Thomas, like, I mean, it's difficult when we're injured, like, you know, because first of all, it was his first big injury and he's in the middle of the biggest fight of his career and he gets injured, and there's a trauma associated with that. So it's, you know, being respectful of that as well. And I suppose it's empathizing with that, which I think is a big part of it, and understanding that. It was quite quickly getting down to business of, okay, what do we need to do today to make tomorrow better? The first bit was really getting to work on normal movement patterns. Thomas was on crutches in the beginning, so it's weaning our way off that. Lots of communication and back and forth as to what he should be feeling, reassurance that it's safe to do this. And that's a huge part. I mean, there's naturally, people don't know what they should be feeling. They don't know how hard they should be pushing themselves. They don't know what's safe and what isn't. And everybody naturally is a little bit protective and guarded because they are trying to do the right thing. But actually, quite often what we have to do is we have to push that on in a way that's safe and in a way that's appropriate. We worked hard on restoring knee extension, range of motion, and quadriceps activation, and that was a big early focus. And look, the great thing about working with Thomas has been that, like, the harder I push him, the better he gets. When you're working with someone like him, when they're in that early post-op phase, you know, in themselves, they're not feeling like an elite athlete, they absolutely have that to tap into. And once you know, start to see a little bit of progress, you start to see that athlete coming out. You could certainly see that Thomas kicked on really, really well in that kind of first 4 weeks. You could see that he responded really, really well. He's also extremely committed, he's dedicated, he's exceptionally good to work with, he's powerful, he's strong. Once we started to tap into those ideas in the rehab, like, it just kicked on and went up a gear and, like, really accelerated. There's a long way to go in any ACL rehabilitation, and, you know, we're going to do things the right way. We're not going to try and rush this or force this. What we're doing now is we're working towards our key aims of restoring symmetry, or making the operated leg the same as the non-operated leg. He'll be 7 weeks tomorrow post-surgery. So today he came in for a rehabilitation session, and today is kind of one of our big rehabilitation session days. So the structure of the session is he comes in, we first of all do an assessment, we have a chat, we catch up on how the knee's feeling, what he's done over the last few days. Today we picked up that there was a small bit of hamstring discomfort. We assessed that, we cleared that. There was nothing there other than just a little bit of hamstring fatigue, maybe related to a heavy loading session we did last week. And then we moved into our activation and our making the knee feel good section of the session. What we did was some soft tissue work around the hamstring, the calf and the knee. We then did some mobilizations of the kneecap, which Thomas has found really helpful for achieving that kind of lockout into knee extension, as well as helping him with that end range of bending. We then checked to see what his quads activation was like. And today was the first day that Thomas achieved without any warm-up. He had no lag, no quads lag. So that was something that he has been doing really well on over the last 2 or 3 weeks, but it would usually take one warm-up set or so to get completely rid of that lag over the last few sessions. So today he's waking up in the morning without any activation and the quads lag is gone. So a really important sign of progress there for him today. We then worked on some quads activation exercises and really got some good recruitment through the quad. And then we moved into some knee flexion, knee bending based work. He did some mobilizations himself and I did some knee mobilizations as well as some contract, relax, stretch type work or P&F type stretch work. His bend was excellent today. I think we're 7 degrees off the other side. You know, a really good kind of start to the session today. And what's been happening for Thomas is that, you know, session on session, it's just been getting easier to fully lock out his knee and easier to fully bend his knee. It requires less work. So while this section of the program initially was quite it was kind of the main event. Now it's becoming just a quick part of the session and the main event now is out in the gym. We started off with a warm-up. We're experimenting with the timing of different parts of our program at the moment. What we had been doing with our plyometric training is we'd been putting that in towards the end of the session when he's already really well kind of activated. Today we trialed putting it in a little bit earlier and that was a bit of an adjustment for Thomas. He didn't necessarily feel as warmed up or as fired up. So that's something that we're kind of monitoring there as to when is the exact right time to add in our jumping and landing work. And we had good progress today really on our plyometrics. And look, really, I suppose, why are we doing plyometrics? Well, these are our more athletic type movements. So for him as a boxer, he's going to be up on his toes, he's going to be bouncing. He's quite quick for a big guy, he's very explosive, he's very quick. So we're trying to tap into that. And we know that we're only going to get as good at our plyometric work as we are first strong and stable. So we are trying to become strong and stable in slower, heavier movements, and then we're trying to access those movements quickly with our plyometrics. We started with some double leg work today. I also added in a sensor to measure his ground contact times as well as his jump heights today, just to get some sort of baseline numbers on Thomas as well as to give him some feedback on each set as to how he's performing. I think, you know, again, as an athlete, that competitive edge comes out. I want to be better than I was in my last set. I want to be better than I was in my last session. So using those objective measurements is really helpful. So we went from double leg into alternate left and right leg, and then we trialed some single leg for the first time today. Of course, single leg hopping is a challenging task, so we very much just introduced that today, and we got some very basic baseline numbers on that, which we will work on gradually. We then did some landing work, and we looked to try and get into some hip and knee dominant movements. And often what happens in the beginning is that after we've had a patella tendon graft in particular, we adopt very hip dominant movements, and that's the right thing to do in the beginning. But then what does normal look like? What does good look like? Well, that looks like I can actually use that knee and let a more knee dominant or knee forward position come out during my landing tasks. And what was interesting today was when we tried to work on that, we noticed that his heel was coming up off the ground on his left-hand side. So we were trying to get into a little bit more knee dominant position. The heel's coming up off the ground on the left side. And then we said, well, what's going on there? So we then assessed ankle dorsiflexion range of motion and realized that actually Thomas had a 4 centimeter difference in between sides on that. And then I performed some ankle joint mobilizations. And after 2 sets of that, we were nearly symmetrical. And actually his landing pattern felt a lot better after that. So I suppose that's a good example of the things you just pick up along the way. Being able to nip things like that in the bud early can be really helpful in progressing the session. And why is he stiff there? Well, look, he hasn't been in that position in over 8 weeks. He's in, his injury was 8 weeks ago or 9 weeks ago. So he hasn't been in those knee dominant positions. So the body adapts very well to the environment we put it in. And if we haven't been there, we just become a little bit stiff there. So there's no actual underlying issue there. It's just the joint's a bit stiff. We're able to loosen it quite quickly. That was our plyometric session. We finished with some loaded double leg landings, and that'll be something that we look to progress gradually, is progressing into some loaded double and then eventually loaded single leg landings. All in all, good progress in his plyometric session. Then we moved into his strength session. In his strength session, we did a deadlift. We were working up to a heavy set of 130 for 6 reps, which he is quite comfortable at. And things that I was cueing him on for that were to, first of all, try and be 50-50 through both sides. It's always a concern when we do double leg work that we bias the good side. So it's been really conscious to ask him and for him to be mindful to load that operated limb. And particularly on the way down today, it was to use his brakes and control that over a 3-second descent and feeling the load through his operated limb, which of course will have a knock-on effect then, for his landing and for his jump mechanics down the line. We then did our leg extensions with blood flow restriction training today. So that's been our Monday session, has been quite a fatiguing quad loading session with blood flow restriction. So We did a sequence of 25 reps, then 15, then 15, then 15 over 4 sets, and he worked to fatigue there. We were nearly touching on failure. And the really encouraging thing for Thomas there is there's absolutely no knee pain on that. It's not always the case. So some people won't tolerate knee extensions like that at this early, and that's absolutely the case. So, you know, you have to play what's in front of you and you have to find what works for the individual. And Thomas's knee is responding really, really well to knee extensions in this early phase with blood flow restriction, which is great because it's one of the most direct ways to load his quad. We want to load it in different ways, in different positions, and this is one of our big exercises. So he kicked on really well on that, and we're kind of chipping away at trying to get as good as the other side on our leg extensions over the coming months. We then moved into a single leg pistol squat control. So we're using one hand for support. We're trying to again access that kind of pattern that is not completely hip dominant, it's knee and hip working together, and getting a little bit of a slow descent and power on the way up. And we loaded that then with 12 kilos on his top set. And again, he's progressing nicely with that. We combined that with a calf raise. His calf is doing really well. You know, calf is nearly symmetrical between sides. We tested it last week and he could do the same number of reps for endurance than he could on his injured side. So that was encouraging. And now we're working on developing kind of peak strength there through his calf. Went well, was well tolerated today again with no discomfort in the knee. Definitely quite a bit of fatigue towards the end of that. And then we finished off with a wall sit, which is a nice finisher. So we worked onto some single leg wall sits, trying to get a little bit lower maybe than we do on our pistol squats to try and just kind of get him into those lower ranges in a controlled way, which will hopefully be something that we can step into with our pistol squats then in time. So that was kind of the overview of the session today, and I think we were both pretty happy with it overall.
I'm really, I suppose, at ease in the sense that I know he is the best man I could be with, and I'm working my way towards the best result. And it takes the pressure away from me, because the big thing with ACLs I see and that I read online is that, you know, you can't do it yourself, you know, and there's an awful lot of manipulating programs depending on how you're feeling day to day. There's no way you could ever gauge it yourself without the knowledge and experience. I suppose it puts me really at ease that he has it all taken care of, and it's really detailed plan for me. It's not a generic plan for, like, you know, ACL comeback. It's all detailed because you've different body types, different body sizes, different pain tolerances. I thought my career was finished and I was going to have to go looking for a job. Do you know what I mean? But then I met Ray, was put at ease, and then Ray put me onto Risteard, and then it's all been up since then. You know what I mean? It really, it actually genuinely has.